welcome to the Living Proof Recovery Podcast. We're your hosts, Brian and Evan, and tonight we are joined by a friend of ours, Erica. She is going to share some of her experience, strength, and hope with you guys. And with that, we'll turn it over to Erica.
Hi, my name is Erica. My sobriety date is March the 6th, 2022. Um, I started at a young, like a lot of us, I started at a young age drinking. And I was always, I could never moderate just from the get-go. Was always a binge drinker. And I felt like, after that first drink and just the feeling of, that first buzz that I got from it, I was always just chasing that feeling all the time, and I'm sure all of us can relate. And so, from 13 on, that was like all I wanted to do every weekend, was, get that buzz going and I just kind of get outside of myself. I just always just needed to feel different and feel like somebody else because I always just had real low opinion of myself, low self-esteem, the whole 9 yards. So, for several years of my life growing up, I was like a party girl. I was fun, always trying to, put on a show for everybody, like to go out and dance and have fun. And I didn't think that it was a problem. Everybody else was doing it. Especially once I turned 21, it was like it's on,
Mm-hmm.
and every single weekend it was, my friends and I going down to the Highlands, going to Bardstown Road, going to all the clubs, all the bars, and it was normal, and all of my friends were big drinkers. We were all partiers. We all loved to go out and dance, and it was no big deal. And it was like a steady decline, just I can look back at the timeline, and from the time I was like 25 up until the very end, I can like watch myself progressing, and it took a lot of time. I got married to my first husband real young, and it didn't work out. I feel like a lot of us that are in the same boat, we like to pick out real winners. My ex-husband was a drug dealer, and he got himself into a little bit of trouble that I wasn't aware of, and so that kind of changed the game with our relationship. So it didn't last very long, and I always used drinking as a crutch. And, went through a divorce at 25 years old. Mm-hmm. And then it just, I'm just spiraling, after that. And just party to, get over being hurt and all of that, Alcohol was always my thing. I dabbled in a few things here and there, smoked a lot of weed. But alcohol was always it for me because it was just so easy to get, and, it was acceptable. And I was scared to death to do anything else. So, that was just how I coped with everything. Something good happens, we're going to celebrate. Something bad happens, we're in mourning, we're going to drink, So, anytime I was in a serious relationship and it went south, there I go. Because again, I'm picking the worst relationships I can possibly pick and people that were terrible for me. And, I was always, very dependent on others for my self-esteem. So codependent was my MO, and I was in a relationship with a guy that is a local celebrity. He's on the radio currently, and he is aware that I'm doing this podcast, and he's okay with me talking about him. So I'm gonna talk about him for a little bit. Because he was a big part of my life, and we were together for like 5 years. And with his line of work and being in a local celebrity, being in the public eye, and at the time he was on a very popular radio station. We did a lot of partying and going out to bars and going to concerts and all of that. And I just thrived, man. That was like
That was like a
that was
dream come true.
perfect. It was my life, and I thought I was gonna marry this guy, and he was quite a bit older than me. So, we had some differences in what we wanted to do with our future. And so when that went south, I just completely lost my mind. And so that was when I really, really got out of control with my drinking. And I spent a good portion of the next 5 years just, there were times when I'd wake up and, don't remember how I got home. Dude, where's my car? Stuff like that. Just going out, through the week. And, I was a very high functioning alcoholic. I've had the same job for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And,
that's rare.
Yes, absolutely. I've always had a great work ethic. Man, I'd show up to work still drunk, throw up in my garbage can in my office, and just keep working. I don't know how I never got in trouble. I never got caught. I was never late to work. I never let it affect my job. And I was always a very good actress. So I was able to pull it off. And I'm very lucky, to this day, because, my boss now, he knows I'm in recovery. And I'm sure he has an idea, that I was doing some things I wasn't supposed to do, but he's just there. My company is very, supportive of me, because I've always been a great employee, I've always just been able to keep it rolling, even when I felt like absolute garbage, coming in drunk and, just still able to perform and do my job. But yeah, I just, I lost my train of thought for a second.
So you said something there that kind of made me think. It's like talks about in the big book about an actor or play the stage character, right? Like whoever you need me to be, like that's who I'm going to be, right? Because I'm codependent, right? Yeah. I need you to like me. I don't want you to like me. I need you to like me. Yeah, I've got to do whatever I've got to do to make you like me. Just let me know. Yeah. Right? Because that's what I'm going to do.
Absolutely.
Right? And if you don't like me, then first of all, fuck you.
Yeah.
And second, like that means there's something wrong with me.
Yes.
And I've got to be better at this manipulation thing.
Yeah.
So it was like constantly like I got to learn how to manipulate. I learned how to manipulate very young, right? But then I was like, I got to learn how to get better at it, because I needed that skill of manipulation, because that's the only way that I can get through the day thinking I'm okay, because you like me. Yeah. Even though you don't know me, because you don't know the real me. Most people, I probably had, hundreds of stage characters that I played.
Oh, yeah.
I got one at work. I got one at work when I'm working with this guy. I got a different one when I'm working with this guy. I've got one or two at home. I've got one in front of my friends. I've got one when I'm in public. I've got one everywhere I go. It's just like shape shifting.
The chameleon.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was always, people always thought that I was like a people person, and because I could get along with anybody, because I could be anybody,
Right.
I could even change my voice to sound like other people.
Yeah.
If there was an particular accent, I can sound just like them, and yeah, it was just so that I could fit in, because I always felt like I did not belong in any group,
Yeah.
And that started from a real young age.
Did that carry over when you got into recovery?
At first, yes.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
At first.
I was curious.
And honestly, I started to be okay with me once I went through the steps the first time and really, I went all the way through. once I did my fourth and fifth step and got some of that baggage out, I was able to kind of drop that mask, that several masks. And, I still catch myself kind of worrying, what does she think about me? And I bet they're talking about me, I mean, especially when I first came into the rooms, like, in my first few meetings and stuff. And, my home group is a women's group, and women are terrible with other women. We just are. We just are. And we're always like, oh, I bet she's a bitch. I mean, and so I just knew they were talking about me, and I knew they were judging me, and because I didn't go to jail. I did not lose my house. I didn't lose my job. I came real close to it, real close to it. At the end there, that's what got me sober and got me into the rooms. Was I was about to lose everything, my husband, my son, my house, I was going to lose it all. And I had to make a choice, But, coming into the rooms, I just felt like I don't belong here because I haven't been through all of that,
Yeah, I think the first couple meetings I went to, I was probably like mid-20s, and I would hear like these things that you're describing, right? I was homeless, or I went to prison, or I had 8 DUIs, or I chopped up 4 people and put them in plastic bags, all this type of shit. And I remember I'd be sitting there thinking, man, I got to come up with a story.
Right.
I've got to make something up. Like, I got to come up with something that's original that, these people are going to think that I belong here. Because at that time I'd had a DUI and I hadn't lost anything. I hadn't been homeless. I hadn't been divorced yet. Didn't lose my kids. Still had a job. Like I didn't have any of that stuff. So I felt kind of like you said, like I didn't belong. Like I was like I didn't feel home yet.
Yeah.
Like I do now. I can go to any meeting now and feel like I belong there. But I didn't then.
And it's funny because you say that and we felt like I felt like I was boring. I didn't have this exciting story. Whenever I've told my story before, I feel like I still kind of feel like it's kind of boring. But one thing that my sponsor has told me, a couple of things actually that she's told me, is that everybody's rock bottom is different.
Absolutely.
And your rock bottom is when you decide to stop digging.
Yep.
And she has also said to me, those things didn't happen to you yet. If you would have kept going, guarantee those things would have happened to you.
100%.
And so I'm like, you got a point there. One wrong choice and it could have been totally different,
Right. And I can remember when I first came around, and like Brian said, he was hearing things, and then I'm hearing those same things. I'm like, man, these are my people, but I didn't want to fully accept it. I was like, I did the same shit, went through the same shit, some worse, and I'm like, these are my people.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to belong here. I didn't want to fit in, right?
Yeah.
And then I've also had, like, I had one sponsee, I guess probably a year ago, that he was struggling with some stuff as far as like we were getting to do his 4th step. And he couldn't. So then I've spoke to Brian about it. I got real honest with him and was like, look, man, I've done X, Y, and Z, and I will open up and talk to you about my stuff. And I never heard from him again.
Oh,
What I mean? So I'm like,
this guy's my sponsor?
Right.
Like, oh God, what am I getting myself into?
Yeah, I always knew you all were my people, but I was years ago when I first came around, I was forced into it. To I said yes to get out of jail at the time, so I was in, but I was like, these are my people, but I don't want you to be my people, you know. So
you had said earlier, like you didn't know. I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was something along the lines of you didn't know who you were.
Yeah.
Right, and in order to find out who we are authentically, like we have to get rid of all the things that aren't us. Right, so like, and you mentioned the 4th and the 5th step. Like, I got to get rid of all that stuff because all these things I've done and all the people I'm angry at, those aren't who I am.
Right.
Those are just things that I've done,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of it says in the big book, right? Fancied or real. Like a lot of it didn't even really happen. Like I'm mad at all these people over things that never even happened.
Right.
You know, so I gotta get rid of all these things, like that aren't me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I like how you said it, because when I got to that point where I got to see the truth about who I really am or who I was and what I need to get rid of, then I can actually make some progress because I can identify, you know, these same behaviors. You know, you said you get in these relationships with these toxic people.
Mm-hmm.
I did too. It was like I'm always dating the same person. They're just in a different body, you know, but it's like the same person over and over. And then I'm like, can't believe she cheated on me. I'm like, well, man, weren't you cheating with her? Well, she was with somebody. I'm like, well, yeah, but I can't believe she would do this to me. You know, it's like, come on, dude. Like, come on. You know, like,
Yeah.
it's crazy shit like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I don't
So-
know.
So I guess once you're hitting your rock bottom, you didn't. I know you said you didn't lose everything, but you were on the brink of it. So when you first came into recovery, I'm assuming no relapses. You came into recovery, and here you are.
Right.
So when you first came into the program, how were you forced into it? Did you willingly come? Were you just kind of like, I'll do this for a little bit? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, I wasn't real sure what to expect when I came to AA. When I first got sober, I actually went to an outpatient rehab, and because I needed a little bit of help, and I've actually gotten a little bit of judgment from people in the program because, and you know, everybody's recovery is different, and to me, it's like as long as you're able to stay sober, you know, that's like one of the obviously the most important thing. But you know, if you need a little bit of help, I went to New Lease over on Shepherdsville,
Okay.
and they do alcohol rehab as well as, you know, opiates and things like that. And I was put on naltrexone
Okay.
to help with the
Is
cravings.
that's like the blocker.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I took
Yeah.
that for a little while.
It did work for me. And so I was in that program for 5 months. I chose to stay in there probably a little longer than I really needed to, but I was really scared.
So
Um,
let's kind of back. What was the judgment?
I know. I'm wondering the same
Was
thing.
the judgment because you went to outpatient and not
Because I was
inpatient?
on the medication to help
okay.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, fuck those people.
me.
yeah, I know
Yeah.
because I know a lot of people who did like Vivitrol.
It's
Right.
the same. It's that in
It's
a
the
pill
same
form.
thing.
Okay.
Same
That
thing.
in a
So-
pill form.
I don't know. I
I
think
took it for a while and then stopped taking
somebody.
it so I could get high.
But I mean, I don't. I guess I just don't understand the judgment
I don't
there on
either.
it because I know a lot of people who used it when they first got out of treatment, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
I chose not to, but I don't see what I don't know what they would be judging you about. I don't get that.
I guess because I didn't just rely on AA
Yeah.
But
to keep me, or my higher power.
I mean, you just
Those
put
same
God of
people will
matters.
tell you not to take other people's inventory.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, you know,
you put a little more insurance on your sobriety.
Right.
You know, to
And not to, you
And
know.
you're not still on it today. Right?
No,
Right,
no, I
so-
stopped taking that
Yeah.
after about 5 months when I decided to discharge myself from the outpatient rehab. Is when I had stopped taking it.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had been going to meetings, and I had a sponsor, and I had
Yeah.
started working the steps and things like that. So I did both of those things, you know, side by side for a while. I was in the outpatient rehab for probably, I want to say about a month before I started going to AA meetings.
okay.
And then I found my sponsor, who I still have today, and that was, I feel like that was God, because she is like the perfect sponsor for me.
In what ways?
She tells me like it is, but in the nicest way possible.
Right.
Because I'm
Erika,
very
honey,
sensitive.
You're fucking up. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. She is the sweetest human being in the world, but she told me, and nobody has ever said this to me before, and man, it hit me like a ton of bricks. She said, honey, you're an egomaniac. And I was like, shit, oh my God, you're right. You
Yeah.
know, I needed to hear that. I'll never forget the day that she told me that. You know, I almost dropped the phone.
That's real love and tolerance.
Yes,
And
yes.
that goes back to something we have talked about before, which me personally, when I sponsor guys, sometimes I can come off a little too strong.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked before. It sounds like she meets you with truth with compassion,
Yes.
and sometimes like I just come with the truth,
Yeah.
and the compassion's not there yet.
Well, guys are a little
You know,
different.
so-
You can be a little rough,
Right.
you know, with each
Yeah,
other, and a lot of guys respond to tough love. Where you know,
Yeah.
women, a lot of us are kind of sensitive.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
you know,
we're ultra sensitive as well because of our pride and our ego. But
but you
at
don't
the same,
show it.
but at the same time, it's like, yeah, you're right. You know,
Yeah.
like I might get mad about it for a few minutes, but then I come around and I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You know, like,
No, I was mad
I'm
when
being
she
an
told me.
asshole. Right.
I was mad when
Yeah.
she told me that, but I was like, "You're absolutely right."
But
Yeah.
sometimes that's the only way we'll hear it. You know, like
Mhm.
for me, because people have been telling me that my whole life, like just trying to bait, you know, we don't, he's fragile. We don't want to break him. You know, we don't want him to go on another bender. So we're not going to tell him what we want to tell him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would just manipulate that. You know,
Yeah.
I would just use that to my advantage. You know, or I would use it as an excuse that maybe I don't have to change, you know. But when somebody was like, hey, fuck your feelings, I was like, oh, I was like, what? You know, and then it was like, okay, you know, like I responded very well to that. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, there's a reason why he's saying this. You know,
Yeah.
it's like he's not saying it to be hateful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was saying it out of love.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, dude, like, I'm not gonna, you know, wipe your butt.
Right.
You know, like I'm not gonna pat you on the back and tell you it's all gonna be okay because it's not gonna be if you don't straighten up.
Well, and the beauty of the sponsorship in AA is that you know they don't have to be, you know, they don't have to do this.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if you don't want their help, okay,
Yeah.
you're on your own. You
So-
know.
One thing I feel like I have come to learn over the last 4 years, especially, is women when they're sponsoring other. I feel like a lot of the, not all the time, but I feel like a lot of the times women are more capable of meeting someone where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
you
that's
know,
true.
because I'll hear my wife when she
Mhm.
sponsors women. I've heard her on the phone before, and I'm like, just fucking tell them, tell them, you know. And I'm like, quit tiptoeing around this shit.
Give me the phone. Give me the phone.
Well, knowing your wife, I'm surprised that she tiptoes around.
Right, yeah.
You know, but I just feel like, you know, I've got to see it, and just with other women speaking to them about recovery, I feel
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
you all are
More gentle.
more gentle,
Yeah.
you know, and or you can say the truth, but come across different than I can
Yeah.
or most men
The
can,
tone's
you know.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I will say, right now I'm sponsoring 3 women, and they're fantastic. You know, I went through, you know, a couple of sponsees, you know, in the beginning that, you know, and then, you know, you blame yourself when
Right.
they disappeared
Mhm.
or, you know, they went back out
Yeah.
or something. You go, oh God, what did I do?
If we
You
had that
know?
much power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, I did something to, you know, put them
Yeah.
up. No, that was on them, you know,
Yeah.
and it was hard the first couple of, you know, sponsees I had that, you know, went back out. And, but I've got these 3 women now that it's like they're my kids, you know. I'm so
Yeah.
proud of them, you know,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
just,
yeah.
you know, I get real emotional. You know, I've gotten to give, you know, tokens
Mhm.
to all 3
The
of them
best.
now. And it's
Isn't
just
that
the
awesome?
best. Yeah, it's the best. But
Mhm.
it's like, you know, they don't realize how much more they're helping me
Yeah.
than than I feel like I'm helping them. And that is, to me, that is like, that's the bread and butter for me of this
Yeah.
whole program, you know, and it's keeping me, you know, going through the steps. Yes. You know, and especially that first round, I've been through the steps twice now. And, I want to go through them again, which I will once I get, but it's like, I feel like I'm going through the steps with all 3 of my sponsees, and I'm like going
Yeah.
every time I'm doing it with
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
you know, so it's like staying real fresh in my mind, and that's important, you know, but but having these women that, you know, they check in with me daily and you know, it's like they're keeping me accountable too. Because if I don't show up for them, you know,
It's a sense of responsibility.
yeah. And like I've never really felt like I had a purpose in my life, you know, up until I got to this point. You know, like I feel like this is, you know, this is my purpose, you know, like I went through all of this for a reason, you know. And man, to me, that, like I said, that sponsorship, there's just nothing like it.
So how did that change, right? So like, first of all, like the first one that you got that stuck, like how long have you been sober at that point?
Let's see. I started working with her. Well, she's coming up on 2 years next month. I started working with her about 1.5 years ago.
Okay, so.
And I'll have
that
4
was
years.
that was your first sponsee?
That was the first one that stuck.
Okay, so
I had a couple before that didn't.
So how did your recovery change as a result of taking someone through the steps?
You know, I'm really, really good at staying in my own head all the time. And, you know, I go through just to kind of preface this a little bit, and a lot of us go through all this, you know, the same things. I've had depression and anxiety, you know, issues my whole life. And, you know, I go through these like phases where I'm like, you know, struggling, you know, sober still, you know, I still fight with this depression and anxiety. It doesn't go away when you get sober, you know. And I go through these phases in my life where I'm just kind of like down and want to isolate. And, you know, even though I'm sober, you know, if I don't stick with this program and keep going through these steps, I feel like having my sponsees where they are, where they're like kind of all spaced out and they're working their programs at different times, they're doing their steps at different times. I'm constantly working the steps with one of them.
Yeah.
And so it's just keeping me on my A game, I feel like, you know, it's keeping things fresh for me, because when I didn't have any sponsees, you know, I kind of was like, I was butthurt because my last sponsee went back out, you know, and I was like, oh, what did I do wrong? You know, and I was like really upset with myself, you know. And so I got like down on myself, and I'm like, well, I'm no good, you know, I don't need to have any sponsees. Well, then, you know, I talked to my sponsor about it, and she was like, get back out there and get some women to sponsor. You know, this is not you. This is not on you. It's on them, you know.
And next up.
And so I feel like, you know, it was like the next one that she stuck and stayed, she just kind of fell into my lap, you know. And she started, you know, coming to my home group, and we were outside talking, you know, after the meeting one night, and she was like, well, my sponsor that she had before, it wasn't working out, you know, didn't go into detail, but whatever. And I said, well, I can be your temporary sponsor, and we'll just see how things go, you know. And she has the opposite schedule as me, you know, she works nights and I work days, and we're like, we'll just see how it works out. Well, that girl's been with me ever since, you know, and she checks in with me every single day. And, you know, we got to work right away on the steps. She had started them with her sponsor that she had, but she wanted to start over with me, you know, and start fresh. And I thought that was a great idea. So
I love that you just pretty much told her, hey, I'm your sponsor now.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't wait
for
her to ask you. Like, that's how we're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Like,
it's kind of a joke with some of my friends in recovery, because I'll joke with people and tell them, you know, I'm going to make you be my friend, or like, I'm going to sponsor you.
Right.
And that's how it's been for one of my other sponsees too. I just told her, well, I'm going to sponsor you, and we'll see how it goes. You know, because she didn't have one and she needed one.
That's what we need, because as a newcomer, it's so hard as a newcomer to go up to a complete stranger and be like, hey, will you sponsor me?
Yeah.
You know, people with fear comes in, you know, we're supposed to carry the message. So we need more people to do that, you know, to just take the initiative to go out and say, no, I'll sponsor you. And if it doesn't work out, it don't work out. That's cool. You know, but
so if we had the opposite approach, right? So if I'm sitting around making someone approach me, right, or waiting for them to approach me, then there's a lot of pride and ego and arrogance in that. It's like, well, you need to humble yourself before me and show some real humility. Like, this guy's 4 days sober. He's still smelling of the pipe.
Right.
You know, like, he's not going to,
Yeah.
he doesn't even know what questions to ask.
Well, and
You
you know,
know.
when you're new in sobriety, you're so broken down,
Yeah.
you know, and like
You don't even feel a part of anything.
I didn't even want to talk, you
Yeah,
know,
right,
and I
yeah.
was crying the first like
Yeah.
several meetings I went to, just
Yeah.
bawling my eyes out, you know.
It's all gonna be
Yeah. So, and I mean, the way I got my sponsor was the first meeting that I went to. It's not my home group; it was a different meeting. You know, I spoke up and I got my silver chip. You know, and my sponsor walked up to me after the meeting and handed me her phone number. And she was the only person in that
That's a
meeting
good
that did that.
sponsor.
Yes. And she was like, you call me anytime. You know,
Mhm.
she didn't say she would be my sponsor right then and there, but she just said, you call me anytime. And that stuck in my head. And it took me a good month after that before I asked her to sponsor me. But I was like, wow, you know, this person gives a shit.
Yeah.
Like, and I love AA, right? But there are some things that, especially in 2025, that I wish we could change. And I've been in meetings where Brian has done it, and I wish it happened at every meeting. And because you hear it at just about every meeting you go to, if you're willing to sponsor, please raise your hand.
Yeah.
But
It's backwards.
it's right.
Yeah.
I wish we could change that to where it's, if you're, and I've heard Brian do it, and I've heard other people before, but you know, if you're looking for, or you need a sponsor, raise your hand. And then, okay, there they are. If
Yeah.
you're willing to sponsor, there they are.
That is
You know?
actually something that we're talking about changing in
Good.
my home group.
Yeah.
Good. That's the way it should be.
Right.
You know, because it doesn't really accomplish much, right? Like, I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong or bad. Like, so who's willing to sponsor? My hand goes up. Maybe I didn't even say anything in that meeting.
Right.
And some new guy isn't going to approach me. You know, it's just not going to happen.
Well,
you know, unless someone says, "Hey, you should go talk to him."
Mm-hmm.
You know, that just gives me an excuse to just leave. But if I need a sponsor and I raise my hand,
Yeah.
I might get swarmed by 5 different people. You know,
Right.
saying, "Hey, you're fighting over me." You know, "Hey, I want to sponsor you."
Yeah.
No, I want to sponsor you. No.
Talk about
Yeah,
ego.
don't let him sponsor you. He'll fuck you up. Don't let him sponsor you. You know? But yeah, so I think that's great that you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
changing that.
Well, yeah, you said, you know, if you didn't say anything in the meeting and you raise your hand, nobody's going to pay attention to it. It's actually, coincidentally, my third sponsee that I picked up. I picked up at your all's home group. The one and only time I went to it.
Nice.
I never spoke in the meeting.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I raised my hand. It was the one and only time my sponsee went to that meeting. She needed a sponsor, and I don't know if it was just because I was wearing a brightly colored shirt that day, but I raised my hand, and after the meeting, she came up to me and asked me if I needed or wanted to sponsor her. You know, are you taking sponsees? I think is what she said, and I was like, yeah, I raised my hand, you know, and that's how I ended up getting her. But you know, maybe it was just the color I was wearing that stood out because I didn't say a word in that meeting, you know. Or maybe somebody I knew at the meeting said, you know, hey, you should go, you know. But yeah, I mean, I think that doing it the opposite way is a way more effective. And you know, when you're new, you know, in the meetings and stuff, you're so scared. You don't want to talk to people, you know, and it just takes the awkwardness out of it. You know?
Really does. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know, of having. You know, because I heard somebody say that one time was, well, they need to, because I had this question for my first sponsor, and because I was working in IOP, and this guy came up to me and he said, hey, this guy offered to sponsor me. I feel like that's a red flag. And I was like, why? You know, and he was like, because I'm not supposed to ask him. And I was like, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's like, he just wants to help you.
Yeah.
You know, and my sponsor happened to be there. And he was like, you told him wrong. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, he needs to have enough humility to ask for the help. And I was like, well, he's at the meeting. I was
Mhm.
like, that's kind of him screaming, I need the help.
Right.
I was like,
Yeah.
we don't necessarily have to have humility on day 3. It's good to have it,
Right.
but we don't always.
Well, and I
Have
also,
it.
I also
Right.
feel like, when you're it's for me, it was kind of like being the new kid at school,
Yeah, that's
and
exactly
you
what-
come in and it's like all, like I walked into my home group meeting, it's full of women, and I knew one person at that meeting that I had reached out to, and she met me there, thank goodness, or I probably wouldn't have gone back, because that first go around at my home group, it was a different group of people. Some of them are still there, and luckily I'm pretty tight with a lot of those women now. But when I first came in there, it was like felt like I was in that movie Mean Girls, and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and I'm just like,
Clicks.
yeah, it was very clicky, and I was like, I don't know about this,
Yeah.
And then when you are the person that comes up to the newcomer and introduces yourself, and it makes them feel welcome, then they are going to keep coming back,
Right.
you know. I didn't come back to that meeting a whole lot in the beginning because I felt kind of weird,
Right.
Didn't feel real welcome.
Yeah, like when we tell people to keep coming back, it's like keep coming back to what?
Yeah.
Right? So if you're leaving the meeting feeling alone
Mm-hmm.
and like you don't belong,
We got to give them a reason to want to come
Yeah.
back.
yeah, it's like I don't want to come back because I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it's our responsibility
Yeah.
to be there for them, to make them comfortable, to give them a reason
Mm-hmm.
to want to come back.
Yeah.
They're just not going to intuitively know.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, this is where I need to go. I need to work steps. I need to get a sponsor. They don't
Yeah.
know that shit.
They have no clue.
I didn't.
I knew nothing about. Well, I knew a little bit about AA when I first came in because everybody's got alcoholics in their family. I have
Mhm.
alcoholics sprinkled in. My parents are not. They're not one of us. But my dad's brother, my uncle, was actually in the program for 30 plus years before he passed away, and he sponsored tons of men. It was up in Ohio where my family's from. But I knew a little bit about AA, just because of my uncle. But he didn't talk a whole lot about it, to the family. So, I'd heard a little bit about the 12 steps, and,
Right.
I knew that, there was something called, the sponsorship and stuff like that, but I didn't know the ins and outs. I had no clue what I was getting into when I walked in, and, yeah, it's very intimidating,
Yeah.
nerve wracking, and yeah. So, I mean, if you don't have people that make you feel like you're coming home, basically, because that's how I feel now.
Yeah.
When I walk into my home group on Monday nights, it's like damn family reunion,
Yeah.
And I just saw you last week, but we hug each other and
Yeah.
love on each other like we
Mhm.
haven't seen each other in months,
Yeah.
And I've never had that with any other group of friends, in my life, even my own family sometimes,
Right.
and I feel like I'm coming home every week. And I want to make sure that the newcomer feels that way when they're walking in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I just like I'll be your sponsor. Come on,
Yeah.
You don't know this yet, but I'm your
Yeah,
sponsor.
and that's exactly how it's happened with a couple of them,
Yeah.
And it's like, I can kind of pick out the ones that, need to come out of their shell.
Mhm.
And, I like a challenge.
Yeah.
So, because I always felt like, I could never really be myself,
Mhm.
and the real me was in a shell, all the time. And, I don't want anybody to feel that way, like they have to hide, you
Yeah.
know, because you're not going to heal
Yeah.
if you don't shed some of that,
Yeah, there's no way to get well.
Right.
Just
That-
go through in it.
So I know for me, when I got sober this time, I pretty much, over the years, even when I was in recovery and I had some years at certain points, I never really had like a solid group of men in my life. I had people in recovery with me that I could reach out to, but nothing like I do today. But when I came back and I got out of treatment this time, there was a group of men to where I was like, I'm coming. You know what I mean? And I just kind of like pushed my way in there, maybe without anybody really noticing, but it was like, I'm here and I'm just gonna do what you guys are doing, so.
Now we noticed. We're like, who's this guy think he is?
Right. Not here. I was like, I'm gonna make you love me.
You will love me. I was like, I already did.
Right. So it is, but it is intimidating at first, right? But I just knew, I was like, okay, and that's because I had been around before, so I knew this time around, like, okay, I can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
This is something we have to do together. And then just kind of backing up to what you were saying earlier about working the steps, something that we do. So when I first got out of treatment, I went through the steps twice in like the first 8 months, right?
Wow, yeah.
I was like with 2 different sponsors. I had a sponsor when I got out, and then got another sponsor and went through the steps again and went through the refuge recovery program, and I was like real on it. But I've sponsored several men, so it's like I go through the steps with them when we do it. But then we have a men's group that we meet up with, every week, and I think we go through it like once a year. We do a step study together, you know what I mean, and kind of just brush up to keep it fresh, So that's been really, really good for us as well.
Yeah.
So I always recommend that.
Yeah, group effort.
We never, I've said it, we don't ever complete the 12 steps.
Right.
It's never, we don't just work the 12 steps and then we're done. The 12th step is to carry this message, right? So it's never over, but it's always good to just go back and keep everything fresh and brush up,
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I want to say something and my mind just went blank on me. What was I going to say?
I feel like my short-term memory is absolutely shot.
Yeah, me too. Like someone's like, do I have CTE? I've actually had this conversation with my therapist, like, because of a bad concussion I got, and my memory's just been. But some of the weird thing about it is like, some things I can rattle off like that. But then some things I should remember, no.
I honestly feel like the 20 plus years of drinking heavily and all the weed that I smoked, I know that affects your short-term memory.
Yeah.
I really feel like that, honestly, my short-term, because if I don't have it in my calendar,
What?
like when we talked about doing this show, immediately I put it on my calendar in my phone, and I had like alarms and stuff going off to remind me like 2 days before and the day before. So like, don't worry, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah, I texted her today, or I sent her a message today and was like, "We're still on tonight, right?" Because you probably thought I didn't think you would be here, but Leah did that to us. We got Leah, so I was just like, I just better make sure.
You got Leah.
I just better make sure that she remembers.
Yeah. I wouldn't have if it wasn't in my phone, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, we go through the steps, like you said, when we're sponsoring someone, I'm constantly like picking up on new things, or even if it's something I know, I'm picking up on a new way to teach it, so I'm constantly ingrained in the program.
Yeah.
Or at least I try to be, right? And you said something earlier that I start to notice myself too, that if I go like an extended period of not having someone go through the steps, or to take through the steps, I get like a little, antsy. It's just like, I'm like, I need to find another one. Like, I need to go get one. And they seem to come in like threes. Like I'll get one. I'm like, man, I need a new sponsee. And I finally get one. And then the next day, somebody's like, hey, can you sponsor me? And I'm like, yeah. And then the next 2 days later, hey, I'm like, shit. Like, this isn't what I wanted.
Yeah. That's how it was for me when I told my story. It was like the first time I got asked to speak was actually my sponsor asked me to speak at her celebration one year, and then it was like bam, bam, bam. I got asked like 4 more times in a row after that, and I was like, shit. You know, I mean, it was a lot of anxiety going on at that time because I don't, I don't like, and I don't think many of us do like being up in front of people and talking, but it was a lot, and it does happen like that, just all in a row. And I feel like I got my sponsees one after the other real quick like that.
So, something you just said, like a lot of us don't like to be up in front of people, and that's the difference, right, in sobriety now is that we can do those things.
Yeah.
I don't like it, right? Like I tell people a lot of times, like I'm extremely shy.
Yeah.
I'm an introvert. People are like, no, you're not. Like, no, I really am. Like, you don't understand how shy I am.
Yeah.
Painfully shy. But when I start talking about this stuff, or if I'm around people that I'm really comfortable with, I can kind of come out of my shell a little bit. But it's only because I've practiced the program that I'm able to do that. Because I might seem while I'm talking like I'm calm and everything, but on the inside I'm like, oh, they're judging the fuck out of you right now. Like I'm nervous. And I'm like, why am I so nervous? I know all these people.
Right.
Like this is crazy.
Why are my
I've done
hands
this.
dripping in sweat?
I spoke at this meeting 5 times already, and I'm still nervous.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I just spoke a couple weeks ago
Yeah.
at our home
he
group.
was like, why am I so nervous?
And I
was
was
like,
like,
oh, I
man,
get it.
I know.
I never want to do it.
Yeah.
Like I feel like when we share and stuff in our meetings, it's like we're kind of like telling our story in fragments, like bits and pieces when we share. So there's really no difference there, but it's like you have all this pressure because you're standing up in front of everybody.
Yeah, everybody's looking up. So the last time I did it, they have a podium.
Yeah.
And I asked to use it. I was like, can I use the podium? And they're like, yeah, sure. I was like, cool. I was like, I'm above all of you people. That's how it started. I was like, I wanted this podium so that you guys can be down there and I can be up here.
I prefer to be behind something because I feel like I'm safe.
Yeah, I feel like I gotta hold on to something.
I've got something between us.
I'm too anxious to sit there. Like I gotta stand. I gotta pace around and because I gotta get some of that energy out. Or I'm just sitting there like like everybody can see it. Like, what's wrong with him?
Yeah, why has he got the shakes?
Yeah. Going to DT.
Yeah.
So, I guess what is life like today for you? You've been sober for coming up on 4 years, and you said March.
In March.
In March.
March 6th.
March 6th.
Mine's the 7th.
Really?
I thought we almost had the same sobriety date.
Yeah.
So
March 6th, 2022.
What does it look like today? Like, what is this program giving you in your life?
Peace of mind. Just knowing that I'm not any different. One of the most important things that I've taken out of the big book, and I love that it gets read at every single one of our meetings, is from acceptance. And like I said, most of my life I always felt like I wasn't good enough. I didn't belong to anybody. I just felt like unworthy of being anybody's friend or anything like that. And one of the lines that sticks out to me in acceptance on page 417, I've read it a million times, is we're all children of God and each of us has a right to be here. And
Unless you take naltrexone.
Yes. And that's typically being judged by old timers. I'll just say that. Yeah. You might have to cut that out of this. But
they're probably not. Yeah.
They don't even know what a podcast is, right? But yeah, I mean that's what I've taken with me from one of the biggest things is, I am no different than anybody else. I'm no better or no worse than anybody else. And that has given me so much peace of mind. And just the fact of feeling like I do have a true purpose in life, that may not look like I thought it was going to look, I always wanted to be so important and, but I am important to my family, and I'm thankful that I'm an alcoholic, because had I not gone through the things that I went through in life, I wouldn't be here today. I might not have my son, I might not have my husband, and I'm not saying that sobriety is peachy keen, because it's not. We've all walked through things in our sobriety that's been really, really difficult. But just knowing that I don't have to drink today, and I've got people that have my back and that they truly get me. That's the thing.
Yeah.
People in the program, I've got, my mom and dad are fantastic people. Fantastic people.
Yeah.
But they don't get me.
Yeah, they don't get it.
They love me unconditionally. Yeah, thank God. But
Yeah.
they don't know what's going on up here.
Yeah.
And my dad has said, I wish I understood. I don't understand. But I love you no matter what.
Right.
And I support you. But he was like, I don't get it. Because my dad, he drinks 2 beers every night.
Mm-hmm.
Done. My dad's Polish.
It's weird,
they drink
right?
beer. Yeah, I'm like, I've never understood. Never understood how he could stop at 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That makes me think of something that when I was working in the treatment center, I was doing this group about the genetic component, the biological component, that we're wired this way with this allergy. Like, we have it. Like, and I was talking about, if you really look up through your family, it doesn't have to be your immediate, like your parents, your brother. It can be an aunt or an uncle, grandfather. Somewhere along the line, someone has this gene.
Yeah.
Right? Or it could be
Sprinkled
mental
in.
health. Like,
Yeah.
somebody has it somewhere down the line. And this guy wanted to debate me about it. He was like, no, my parents don't drink, don't do any of that stuff. My grandparents don't. And I was like, man, I don't know. And, we talked for, I think somewhere along the line, it's there. And he was like, it's not, because I've looked. And we talked for like 10 minutes, and he finally tells me, well, I mean, I'm adopted. And I was like, dude. I was like, well, I mean, you're looking up the wrong family tree. He never knew his parents.
Well, there's also, that's a huge one there.
Yeah,
There's
like,
also the fact of it doesn't have to be drugs and alcohol.
No, it could
You
be
could be
mental health.
addicted to food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could be addicted
Gambling.
to porn, gambling.
Yeah.
It's not just, it's whatever gives you that dopamine.
Yeah.
And that instant gratification, that head rush that, it doesn't have to just be from drugs and alcohol.
What's making you feel okay?
Yeah. What brings you comfort, and takes you out of yourself for a while, So I mean, my parents aren't alcoholics.
Yeah, mine aren't either.
But my parents are also like chain smokers.
Right.
Both of them. Chain smokers.
Yeah.
That's an addiction right there. And that's one of the worst addictions you can have, because it's so hard to quit, And
I mean, my dad's a diabetic, and I didn't get that gene.
Right.
I mean, it's just like some things skip generations.
Yeah.
That was one thing that I really struggled with. Another reason to feel like I'm different, because my brother isn't one of us. My mom isn't one of us. My dad isn't one of us. But everyone in our household, like, I'm the one.
Yeah, you're like, what?
I'm the one. But I realized once I finally understood, and you kind of touched on this earlier, like what was wrong with me, then I was able to do something about it and realize that I'm a sick person.
Yeah.
I just have a different disease than what my dad has. Yeah, his is diabetes.
Yeah.
Mine's alcoholism.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you got anything else?
No. You got anything else for me? No more questions.
How are we doing on time?
Right an hour.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for coming out. Killed it. Did great.
Thank you.
It was great to have you.
It's a pleasure.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.